Let's bring in Roger Baker now, Stratfor Senior Vice President of Strategic Analysis at RAIN. A lot happening here just before midnight. Roger, local time, the last U.S. military planes left Afghanistan. Every last U.S. service member is out. So I want to ask you the question I just asked Sean. Is the war really over, or is another one just beginning?
Well, I think the combat mission for the United States is clearly over, but as we look at Afghanistan, there are two major conflicts that are still underway. There's the question of whether the Taliban are going to be able to hold control or whether we're going to see Afghanistan slip into a civil war. And there's the ongoing counterterrorism operations of the United States that are still going to continue to focus on Afghanistan and the immediate region.
So with various terrorist groups still inside Afghanistan, what does happen to U.S. counterterrorism capabilities now that the military is out?
Well, it's not clear that the U.S. military has to physically be on the ground to be able to carry out counterterrorism operations. The United States is not actively in every country in the world, but that doesn't necessarily stem its ability to be able to observe, to be able to strike at organizations when they see action and movements. It may reduce some of the intelligence collection capability of the United States, and there are some challenges of reaching into Afghanistan because many of the countries surrounding Afghanistan are not allowing U.S. basing for counterterrorism operations, but it certainly doesn't end what the United States is going to do as it identifies and potentially strikes the transnational organizations that still operate in and outside of Afghanistan.
Well, we know there are still some remaining U.S. citizens inside the country that were not able to get out. What happens to them? And we've also seen in the last few hours the Taliban celebrating. So what will the coming days inside Kabul look like?
Well, this is a very interesting question because the Taliban has an incentive to at least appear more moderate than it has in the past. If you look at the economic situation in Afghanistan, this is a country that's been heavily dependent on foreign aid just for basic operations, basic maintaining of city operations and government operations. That money is frozen, and the Taliban is going to need to access international financing. To do that, it has to demonstrate that it's going to keep some sense of stability and that it's not going to immediately go out and cause problems and carry out retaliation attacks and things of that sort. The challenge for the Taliban is that not all of its members agree with that, and it's made up of several factions and other militant organizations it works with that may not agree with that goal, even if the core leadership wants to achieve that.
So if the Taliban is able to do all of that, will the international community recognize the Taliban as a governing body in the country? Will they have legitimacy?
I don't think that's going to come for a while, but I do think the international community is looking to work with the Taliban, particularly for the distribution of humanitarian aid. If you look at the FAO and their concerns about the drought in Afghanistan right now and the potential 7 million Afghans who are facing challenges due to the drought, you look at the questions of education, medical care, all of that is things that are supplied by the outside world. And whether they're going to recognize the Taliban formally, diplomatically, is unlikely, but they are probably going to be working with the Taliban and communicating with the Taliban.